Welcome back, everyone, to the Ultimate Recruiter, your ultimate source to building a seven-figure recruitment business. I'm Jerred, and I'm your host. Please make sure and like and subscribe to Ultimate Recruiter. You can find us on YouTube as well as on Spotify. Looking forward to having you join us today. So I didn't do a video last week. I was out of town doing some out in the Gulf of Mexico on a 4-day fishing excursion, doing some R&R, charging my batteries back up, but back in the saddle this week, and glad to be able to do a video for you this week. So let's jump in and get real here. I wasn't going to do this particular video at this point in time, at this juncture, during this, I guess, kind of blog, this journey of me scaling this organization, but wanted to provide, just wanted to go ahead and do one, and it's kind of more of a 30,000 foot view of how I scaled this organization, this recruitment business from six figures to seven figures. I've been asked, six figures, or seven figures. Yeah. That means at least $1 million. That is correct. So I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, so can you. So it's not rocket science. So this is my story and what I've done and what has worked for me. So everyone's method's going to be a little different. Everyone's way of doing business is going to be a little different. And I'm happy to share my way and what's worked for me. I've put a few videos up already just here recently on kind of how I started getting into the business and the tools that I used. Again, I had zero experience in the agency side of it. And I was more focused in maximizing, putting some money in my pocket. I had some people reach out saying, hey, man, great videos. I've learned a couple of things, these tips, these tricks. I'm just starting out. Then I had some people reach out saying, man, your processes are dated. I can't believe you were using notepads, Excel, Google Voice. I'm like, hell yeah, I was, man. I was trying to maximize the money coming in my pocket. It was all about hires. I didn't want to have subscriptions of software and things like that hovering above my head. I wanted to put the money in my pocket. So that's what I was focused in on. So look back a couple of videos. I think it's a few videos back about, the tools that I used in the very beginning. And maybe there's something there, for you that are just starting out, you may find helpful. So again, this is, my background started in human resources. I was fortunate enough to jump into the HR business. I was HR operations leader for a multi-thousand employee organization. And so I had an HR background that I could lean on jumping in and starting up this particular business here. So I was privy to certain contracts, agreements, and stuff like that that were coming across, paying these invoices, and I knew kind of how things were structured, and I was able to see what type of candidates were coming across the screen or what were coming across the desk that were getting hired. And those candidates we always like to call our fee-worthy candidates. And there was a general consensus, a common denominator there, that these candidates were, had very strong tenure. They didn't do a lot of job hopping and things like that. And they were very specific to the nature of the position that we were looking to hire them for. So I knew that I needed to put effort and really deliver some high caliber candidates. So when I first started the business, man, I'm going to be honest with you, it was a struggle. And I was fortunate enough right off the bat to land two really good clients at some pretty good rates at 20%. And but I had to grind it out. Those clients weren't giving me a whole lot of work. A lot of the clients that I had were at 10%, 12%, 15%. Hell, I was all over the board. But I had to do what I had to do to put food on my table. The ones that I had at 20%, like I'd mentioned, weren't giving me a lot of business just yet. But then as I grew and, I started shelling off some of those 10%, 12%, 15% organizations, those companies that weren't willing to come up to a more desirable rate, such as 20%, 25%, or whatever it may be. And I knew I wanted to focus in engineering, project management, leadership, accounting, finance. So after growing and getting more confident and disciplined, again, I started shelling some of those ones off and getting to those more desirable rates. And I was having great salaries too. I mean, I was having all day, every day type salaries of $115,000, $150,000, some of them approaching over $200,000. And I was filling these positions. So, man, things were going good. I saw a post the other night on Facebook. Someone had asked, hey, is 15% too low? And there was a lot of comments on that. Man, what I can say is you do you. You find out what works for you and your system. And if it works, hey, jump in, make the most of it, and over time do what I do, or what I did was start shelling those less desirable rates off if they don't come up to a more desirable rate, and then you can expand from there. So going back to the agreement structure, again, I was a rookie at this. I didn't have a whole lot of experience, and I had guarantees that were all over the board. And the guarantees that I had were refunds. And I tell you, I worked too damn hard for a candidate to be placed up under a manager who has no business managing someone, or a toxic environment. To only have the person quit at 85 days when my guarantee's at 90 days, to only have to refund $25,000. That didn't just happen once. That happened 3 times, and I see it from experience, and it happened pretty quick. And I realized, like, hell no, I paid back almost $100,000. I was out. I wasn't doing that anymore. Um, so I changed my agreements to do more of a replacement only, and trying to scale back more of those 90-day guarantees to a more 30-day guarantee. And I'm a firm believer that recruiting is recruiting. Retention should lie in the hands of an organization, and that should be their responsibility. And I try and preach that to them as well. So we have no control up under the manager or management, or whatever it may be that they're getting hired into. So when I look at my billings when I first started out, man, I was killing it. I was killing it pretty quick, but I was stuck. I was stuck in a band where I was between 600 and $750,000. I really couldn't break that $750,000 mark, no matter how hard I tried. I just seemed to be stuck. And I had individuals that I took good counsel in, took advice from, other recruiters who were just absolutely crushing it out in the market. And I was like, man, I need to change a few things. Keep in mind, I'm doing solely contingency search at this point in time. I had zero experience in an agency, and contingency was all I knew. I started going into client meetings, kind of with a more change of attitude, and that, I need to be more of a problem solver. I wanted to listen into what these companies were, what these companies had going on, and be able to provide solutions into what their situations may be. So as an example, I was doing work for a company out of Singapore, and they invited me over to Singapore to go meet with their executive level team. And I was like, hey, yeah, I'll go make that trip. Ended up traveling back and forth to Singapore a few times, and the chairman of the organization said, hey, we want you to handle all these leadership positions, these big engineering roles. And I'm like, he said, can you do that? And I'm nodding my head, yes. And keep in mind, it's just me. And I walk out of that meeting thinking, what the hell did I just agree to? But it was incredible. Learned a lot. It was fast paced, and I was able to handle this stuff extremely quick. And at the time, a lot of people wanted to go work internationally, and I was able to, make a lot of good things happen. So, going back to the areas that really helped me scale from, say, $600 to $750,000 to breaking that 7-figure mark, are two things. Number one is retained search, and number two is contractors. From a retained search standpoint, what I really liked about that was you get paid up front for the work that you're doing. At least you get something up front. It's not like contingency where, you're not paid if the person isn't hired. At least you're getting something out of it. Plus, you're dealing with more desirable rates at more higher level positions. So typically 33-ish type percent. And these were, I went from recruitment fees of being $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 plus, to now some of these recruitment fees for these retained searches are $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, even some of them over $100,000. Now, granted, I wasn't doing a whole lot at that point in time. It wasn't rapid fire like the contingency side, but it was an area that I knew I wanted to put more focus into. So how did I get involved into the retained piece of it? So I thought it was going to be easy, but my clients saw me as a contingency-based company. So I was in a meeting one day, and I was listening to the management team talk, and that they had this really strategic hire, it's an engineering hire that they were looking to make. And I was to provide them with this chief engineer. It was a very specialized engineering position within this company. And but they couldn't make that hire until they hired a new vice president of engineering. And they weren't looking at me for that. So I was like, and I heard him talking about something about retain search. They need to engage. I was like, hey, let me have a stab at this. I know the industry, I know your organization, and oddly enough, they gave me a shot at it. And crazy enough is that I found the person like in 2 days, and yeah, I didn't present the person that quick. My goal was to find, three, maybe four candidates to shortlist to present over to that client and make their job tough to decide which one of the four to hire from. And ultimately, they ended up hiring that. So I made the pitch saying, hey, guys, give me a shot. I know your company, I know your culture. Plus, you get a 1 year guarantee, and they gave me a shot at it. Also a big item that I started doing to get into the retain search piece of it is, I knew an industry that I wanted to focus in on, and I started sending some newsletters out, industry specific stuff, mentioning success stories. And, I was going to events, and I was sending this stuff out to CEOs, CFOs, chief human resources officers, as those are typically the ones who are making decisions to engage someone in more of a retained search. Now, I wasn't bombarding them with a whole bunch of garbage or anything like that, but sending stuff out maybe once a month type deal. And I would go to events, specific industry events, saying some hellos, becoming a more familiar face. And then I started after that making some phone calls into organizations, sending a couple of emails, and so on and so forth. So the first year I did retain search, I had two retained searches that I did, and two successful ones, and they totaled $175,000. And those execs are still in those positions today, and I have a great relationship with them. And I actually found both of those candidates in, I think, maybe 3 days type deal. I didn't present them that quick, as I had mentioned, but I found that retain piece of it is kind of being a more strategic approach, and I'm finding them pretty quick. That second year going into the retain search piece of it, I went from two successful retain searches to seven. And that was a game changer. And just retain search alone, I did right at $600,000. That's $80,000 average fee. Plus, I was still doing contingency search. Again, similar to the above, I found these individuals relatively quick, and I'm realizing, man, this is something I want to put a lot more emphasis in on. And I enjoyed that piece of it. I enjoyed the conversation with these senior leaders, these executive leaders, and I found out pretty quickly that you needed to be confident, you needed to have good communication skills, but you needed to know the position that you were recruiting for inside and out. You needed to know the organization and really what those plans are for hiring an executive leader. What's the reporting lines? What's the organization look like? What's the struggles? The things that are going well. Are they managing a profit and loss, et cetera? So many factors, and I enjoyed having those conversations with those executive leaders. So put some effort into the retain search, and I think that could scale your business substantially. It takes a little bit of time getting into it, but the reward on the backside of it's absolutely tremendous. So the second area that I mentioned that I focused in on is contractors. And I'm not talking skilled labor contractors. I'm talking engineering, project managers, accounting, finance, interim leadership type stuff. And man, this was an absolute game changer. So how did I come into the contract piece of it? Again, I was in a meeting. I was meeting with a client, and they said, hey, look, we need to make a hire. We have a project specific individual or a project specific item that we're looking at. We need to bring somebody engineering for 6 months. And can you help us with that? So I was like, heck, give me a chance. Heck yeah, I can. So where my office was, I walked downstairs. There was an insurance agent over there, and I went and chatted with him about workers' comp. So he got me set up with workers' comp, general liability, and professional GL. And I think at the time maybe cost me maybe $5,500. And the way workers' comp work, I was quite intimidated by it, but it's relatively cheap. So like, as an example, every $100 of payroll, you're paying maybe 10 cents, 12 cents, and these are all more office-based type position for workers' comp. So it doesn't cost a whole heck of a lot of money, and there's a tremendous reward there. And in that contractor piece of it scaled rapidly. I started off with 1, 2, 5 contractors really quick, and that's just with one client, and had great margins on these types too. I was fortunate enough to payroll them myself, where I didn't have to take a loan out or anything like that, or a line of credit, and I was paying these engineers $75 an hour with a bill rate of $100 an hour. And so I have a margin there of $25 an hour. And So, and it was working out quite well. So with that same client, they say, hey, now we need designers and drafters and a couple other positions. And my margins were still $25 an hour. So now I'm looking at 5 engineers, 3 designers at one time with one company, and I have margins of $25 an hour. And hell, I'm making $200 an hour just with the contractors, and that's just with one client. So do the math on that when you start looking at 2 clients, 4 clients, 5 clients plus, and next thing you know, you have 20 contractors, 30 contractors out, and these are individuals that can are being looked at, they're being led. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I like to call it mailbox money. Man, it's incredible. So for that 6-month project, so if they're working 40 hours a week with those 5 individuals, man, that's $8,000 a week, equivalent to $32,000 a month, or $192,000 for that 6-month project. Man, and that's just with one client. So again, when things scale up and you have multiple clients and you get multiple contractors, it can be a quite lucrative situation. You're probably thinking, man, there's no way in hell one person can do all this. I'll say that if you can juggle 15 positions at one time, you can do this. And maybe 15 is a stretch. That's what I had at that particular time. Now, granted, not every position was getting love, and the positions that I had, I can cross-pollinate one candidate to another position to another position. So I was so specific embedded into a particular industry, a real niche type industry that worked extremely well. So at the time I was doing, 1 million, 1.2, even up to $1.5 million. And, I was buying the insurances and, contracting these individuals and even payrolling them myself. And, it created really a good situation there. So I ended up bringing an individual on board several years back who's a lot like-minded, like myself, manages a full desk. He's great with the client, great recruiter. One of those individuals that can talk to the wall and the wall will start talking back to him. And so with that person coming on board, we were able to scale, say, from a constant, say 1.2 to 1.3 to, hitting that $2 million mark. And that's just with 2 people right there. And I'm telling you from experience that if I can do it, so can you. It wasn't this big formulated plan. It wasn't a big business plan that, we had to map out, but it was just by being good listeners and providing some solutions into these clients. So and I encourage you too, if you're going to get involved in the contract piece of it, you may want to get some legal advice. You may want to, obviously you need to meet with an insurance broker. So find somebody who specializes in that particular industry or with recruitment agencies, and they can help guide you along the way. So hopefully you find these videos, with some value there. Maybe there's something that you can take out of this and apply it to your business, your recruitment business as well. And if you have any comments or questions, put them below. We'd love to be able to address that, and we'll certainly address it in other videos that we do. And I'm going to put some more videos up coming soon where we dive a lot deeper into the retained search piece of it, as well as the contractor piece of it, where we can get into more of the nuts and bolts and, how that looks in detail. So, be sure to like and subscribe to Ultimate Recruiter. Find us on YouTube at Ultimate Recruiter and find us on Spotify at Ultimate Recruiter. And until next time, remember, greatness awaits. I'm Jerred, and I'm signing off.